Corsair have been making great mechanical keyboards for a number of years, and they've been recently updating a few of their older models like this, the K70 MK.2. Now it's not that much different from the original K70, so if you already have one of those and you're happy with it, then you're probably not going to even look twice at this one. But if you're looking for a new gaming keyboard, this is a pretty interesting entry in the world of not ridiculously expensive, but not, budget mechanical gaming keyboards. So the first thing that you will notice when you get it out of the box and plug it in is the massive amount of RGB. It's individually addressable LEDs on each key, obviously RGB, which you can control in the Corsair IQ software, and otherwise you have a pretty overall nice aesthetic. The keycaps are the standard ones that come with pretty much any keyboard, or Corsair keyboard, which means that you can use, for example, the white keycap set that I looked at a while ago for the keyboard if you fancy it, and obviously change up the aesthetic a little bit, but otherwise they are so semi-transparent on the keys themselves, so your RGB light does shine through a little bit. Now in terms of the key switches themselves, they come in a variety of key switch types. In my case I've got Cherry MX Browns, which is the key switch type I prefer personally. Feel free to take a look on the different websites to make sure you get the right key switch for you. On top of the keyboard, next to the rather thick USB braided cable, is a USB type A port. This is a full pass-through, which means that the actual USB cable itself does have two full type A headers on them, so that you can plug those in and get full speed and full data rate and everything like that through the pass-through. The keyboard is actually relatively small compared to a lot of the other kind of high-end mechanical keyboards like the K95. There's no added switches on this in terms of like macro functionality, but they do have a few extra buttons which are quite nice. You still have the metal volume slider sort of scroll wheel type thing, which is actually very nice quality and very smooth to roll on, as well as the mute button and full media keys just below that as well. And you do have a couple of extra buttons, including your lighting button, I believe profile switching button, as well as a Windows lock button. The rest of the keyboard layout is pretty standard. It is a standard, at least in my case, a UK ISO layout, which I'm perfectly happy with, but obviously in your region it may be slightly different, and obviously if you have Dvorak or whatever other kind of key patterns, that will be available on your region. But for me, I'm pretty happy with this overall layout. The only thing I'd mention though is that it seems like the spacing between the switches is a little bit wider than I'm used to, which means that the typing experience isn't quite as nice as my Cooler Master Master Keys Pro L. Now of course this is a subjective thing. The overall typing experience was still quite nice, and of course it will depend on the key switch and all that sort of stuff, but for me personally, I'm not the biggest fan of this typing position and kind of, I guess, switch feel or keycap feel, but again, it's down to personal preference, and I know that a lot of people do enjoy this, so take that opinion with a bit of salt. Now you do also get an attachable wrist rest at the bottom, and this is a kind of strange design. It's a hard plastic, but it's got a soft touch coating all over it, which makes it not kind of any way supple for your hand to rest on. It is definitely very firm, but at the same time still has a relatively nice feel to it, so it's quite a nice balance. Now personally, I prefer to have a detachable wrist rest for more convenience in where I put my hand, but it's nice that this one comes included with one at all. On the back of the keyboard you have a couple of cable management options for routing, well, your cables. Mostly it's a bit of a strange position because it's sort of cross pattern in the center, so I'm not really sure what wires you tend to have coming out of the bottom of your keyboard, but either way it's there if you want it. And you do have large rubber feet on the bottom and the top, as well as two sort of flick out little feet with rubber tips as well. I had no issues with stability for the keyboard. Typing on it was a plenty firm experience, and even without the wrist rest it was still a plenty firm experience, so if you do pick this up, I'm fairly certain that you're going to have a decent time, at least with it sticking on the table just fine. There is actually one more accessory that comes in the box, and that is your gaming kind of style keycaps and the key puller. This, as I said, are their more gaming style. It's something that Corsair have been doing for a fairly long time with their mechanical gaming keyboards, and it's pretty cool. Obviously, they're a bit more sort of as a gaming styled, so they're a kind of grey finish on top with this sort of faux stamped aluminium kind of feel to them, so they're a bit more tactile. They're also kind of grooved a little bit more for things like WASD, so that your fingers sort of sit in them and rest nicely, and otherwise it is kind of an interesting experience. If you're planning on doing a lot of typing on this though, I'd probably stick with the standard keycaps. Now of course this is a gaming keyboard after all, so what is it like to game on? Well, I'm actually pretty happy to recommend it here. It is a decent experience. Obviously with the key space distances and the overall feel of the keyboard, it's still not my personal favorite experience, but it is plenty serviceable, and as I said earlier, take that opinion with a pinch of salt, because again, it's my personal opinion and my personal experience, but it's still pretty decent, and I'd be happy to overall recommend it. So do I recommend the K70 Mark II? Well, generally speaking, yes. You do pay a little bit of Corsair tax, and it is a bit more expensive than I guess you might like for this sort of keyboard, but at the same time, it's still a relatively decent value for money, at least when you're considering the brand name keyboards anyway, and it's still, obviously, depending on the key switch that you get, a pretty decent typing experience overall. It's obviously very sturdy. I expect these to last a good amount of time because they are built really rather well, and otherwise it has a few nice extra features. Obviously the RGB if you fancy that, the dedicated media controls, and the full USB pass-through. Now of course the real question here is, will I be putting this keyboard on my desk? And personally I'm going to say no here. It's not really because it's a bad keyboard, it's just not my personal preference, and I personally feel that the Coolmaster Master Keys Pro L is a little bit of a nicer experience for me, and I'm perfectly happy with it where it is, so that shall be where it stays. Now of course I do still recommend this. I would happily give this a gold award, so feel free to check it out in the link in the description down below if you're interested in picking one up, or if you're just interested in checking out the price when and where you watch this. So you've heard my thoughts. I would love to hear yours in the comments down below. Is this a keyboard you're interested in? Is the RGB a bit too much, or is there just not enough RGB here? Let me know in the comments down below. I'd love to hear from you, and of course if you have any questions about the keyboard as well, feel free to leave them down there too. Otherwise, if you want to support this channel and keep me making these videos on a Monday, Wednesday and Friday basis, then feel free to hit that subscribe button for new videos, well, every Monday, Wednesday, Friday. Of course you can check out the Patreon link where you can support me directly, or the Amazon and Overclockers UK affiliate links, which also massively help me out when you click on those before you buy stuff. Otherwise, you can also check out the other videos over here, and that's pretty much it. I hope you enjoyed it. If you have any questions, leave them in the comments down below, and we'll see you all in the next video.